All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar on building envelope performance verification and commissioning. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be posted on the Colorado Energy Office Code Adoption Toolkit. If there are any issues with the audio, please write me in the chat. My name is Kira Winkle and I am a sustainability consultant for NORESCO. This series is sponsored by the Colorado Energy Office with training materials created by Kevin Perry. Let's see, there we go. We've been working with the Colorado Energy Office to provide trainings just like this one. This is one of many in this series, so please make sure to register for the other trainings that are offered and check out the recordings on the Colorado Energy Office website. There will be a link set out in a follow-up email if you would like to register for future webinars. Also, we are offering tailored group trainings or technical assistance for jurisdictions that are updating I-codes. Please reach out to my colleague, Erica DeLello, to set something up. Most of you may know that the Code Adoption Toolkit and all of the resources available, including all of the recordings from previous trainings, are here. I'll add a link to this page in the chat shortly as well. And I'd also like to highlight the code helpline. This helpline is available to anyone in Colorado on any of the I-codes or REACH codes. So for example, if you are a jurisdiction and need assistance on a plan review, or a homeowner or engineer with a question about code applicability, you can submit a ticket and a subject matter expert will get back to you in a couple days' time. You can access this helpline through the Code Adoption Toolkit or through this link. All right. Throughout this webinar, we want to encourage questions, so please use the Q&A function, and I will let our presenter know at the end of the presentation. There's also the ability to raise your hand to ask a question at the end of the presentation, and I can unmute you. Lastly, there will be a survey window that pops up following the webinar, so please take a moment to provide feedback so we can continue to improve these webinars. Today's presenter is Kevin Perry. Kevin is a certified commissioning professional with over a decade of experience. He is a certified plans examiner and inspector for the IECC, as well as for ASHRAE. And with that, I will let Kevin take the lead from here.
Thanks, Kira. I'm going to share my screen. And I want to make sure that you all are seeing the presentation on the screen. Is that correct? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us today. As we mentioned, this is a presentation on building envelope performance verification and commissioning. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about some building envelope requirements, when and what is required for that, and then building envelope testing, when and how to test. Then we have some time for some questions and answers or discussion at the end. Learning objectives today, we're going to understand what is required within the IECC 2021 for building envelopes. We'll differentiate between the 2021 IECC envelope requirements and the ASHRAE 90.1 equivalent version. That should be 2019, not 2109. And then examine the differences between different building envelope tests that can be done. And finally, review when commissioning is required on the building envelopes. So first off, we need to understand the different pathways throughout the code. And that's not what this presentation is about, but we need a little base understanding. So this is about the IECC, International Energy Conservation Code 2021. However, the IECC 2021 references ASHRAE 90.1, the year 2019. So between these two different code books or standards, if you will, there are differences in what is required for building envelope verification and building envelope performance. So I'm going to do my best to try to explain all the items in IECC 2021 while trying to incorporate and show you some minor differences that are between ASHRAE and IECC. So building envelope, what is the building envelope? And what are the functions of the building envelope? Again, just kind of basics so everybody's on the same page here. Building envelope keeps air out, water out, vapor out, all that above. So basically it's any material or assembly that will keep these items out from entering or exit the building naturally. And if we have to think about a building envelope, we take it, if you look at a commercial building, there's 6 sides to it. If you look at it as a cube, so it'll be all 6 sides, including the bottom. So bottom, all 4 sides, north, south, east, west, and then the top or the roof. Air barriers can be located on the inside or the outside of the building thermal envelope within assemblies or any combination of those. But I like to say for simplicity reasons, it's always easiest to keep it on the outside. And you might be asking, well, why would anybody want to bring it on the inside? Sometimes if you think about building mechanical systems or penthouses, things like that, or even like the photo here, you might have an amenity space that might go onto the inside of the building or transfer to the inside instead of keeping it all on the outside. So when is it required? Performance verification and commissioning on the building envelope. Again, we got 2 different standards, IECC and ASHRAE, so it depends which one you're following. I will say that no matter which way you follow, IECC or ASHRAE, you're almost always going to be required to do some type of performance verification and or commissioning. Now, I will say there are some exceptions to that. So I'll say the easiest way to say it is, when does it not apply? There's a few items of when it does not apply, and that's if it's a separate building, about 1,200 square feet or less. Buildings intended to house electrical equipment only, and the energy use is 7 watts per square foot. So we're talking very minimal. When a building's heating capacity is not greater than 17,000 BTUs per hour, and the space heating is limited to 50 degrees, again, probably not going to happen too often. And then there's a few other ones, more minor ones that have to do with a wall and roof U factors or solar reflectance limits on the roof and things like that. So those are the only exceptions on when you won't need to do performance verification or commissioning on the envelope. So very, very few commercial buildings will fall into that category. All right, so let's talk IECC building envelope requirements. IECC states that these 3 things need to be done when you're doing building envelope performance verification and commissioning. It's a little bit tricky on how we talk about verbiage here with verification, building envelope, air barrier, things like that. So bear with me as I try to straighten, as I have trouble doing it, and I do it all the time. But the IECC for commissioning and or verification, whatever you want to call it, says you have to do these 3 items. You have to review documents, do inspections, and have a report. So as simple as that is, it's not that much if you're used to regular commissioning on mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. Now we're just adding building envelope into the mix. IECC says you could do those 3 things, or you can do a whole building air leakage test. So it's really 2 pathways within IECC. You can either do the left-hand column or test the entire building for air leakage. Now, just remember, we're in the state of Colorado, and the state of Colorado has a lot of different authorities having jurisdiction, over 300 of them. And each one of those has the ability to amend the IECC. So if you follow it by the book and you aren't sure, those are your options. But just know that if the AHJ has changed it or made some amendments, they can require you to do both, or keep it either, or keep it neither. So I know that some of the bigger cities and counties and different AHJs have included the and option. I know some smaller AHJs have put the neither option. And so they've kind of eliminated this out of the IECC. So from a baseline, if you're following IECC 2021, just know that from a baseline, you have to do or, but look into what your AHJ might have amended for this section. So let's talk about ASHRAE pathway. So if you're following ASHRAE, and the reason I'm talking about ASHRAE, because a lot of projects that I see go through the ASHRAE pathway. So just because you're not technically following IECC, because maybe you're doing an energy model, then you would still have to follow the ASHRAE pathway. And so that's why I'm going to put it on the screen. ASHRAE, from a baseline, says you have to do these 3 items. So you have to have a commissioning plan, review the documents, and you have to do 2 different reports. And remember on the last slide, IECC said or. You also have to do a whole building air leakage test or design reviews and inspections. So it's kind of, you have to do the 3 on the left, and then you get to pick which item you want to do on the right. So if you're following ASHRAE, you have a little bit of a little bit more options if you are following that pathway. So side by side, let's compare those. Just I made one screen. Maybe if you want to take a screenshot, that's fine. But hopefully this is a little bit easier than seeing 2 separate screens. I know it's kind of funky layout and things like that, but hopefully this is a little bit easier to see both of those side by side comparison. So ASHRAE and IECC, you're still going to have to review documents no matter which way, right? And you're also going to have to do a report no matter which way you follow. Now, then, if you're going to do the whole building leakage or design review and inspections, that's up to, you know, which pathway you're going to go down. Okay, so if we combine the 2, now we're getting into the meat of the presentation here. If you combine the 2, these are really, in a nutshell, what you would have to do. A commissioning plan, document review, inspections, report, and the whole building air leakage test. So we're going to go through what those 5 items are and the rest of the presentation. Just so you know, there have been some updates for the envelope performances. I don't think I'll go through all of them. I have some slides that talk about each one, but just know that the performance of your envelope has increased from previous versions. So insulation values, lower U factors and solar heat gain coefficients, some things like operable opening interlocks have been added. Air leakage or infiltration has been broken out into different group types, things like that. So just know that just because you have to follow this kind of commissioning and performance verification in the IECC or ASHRAE, that some of your components of the envelope are going to need to be looked at as well, because those values have increased or lowered depending on what they are. Just an example right here, differences between IECC and ASHRAE, the different versions, things like that. I'm not going to spend much time on here because this doesn't show you the differences between the last version and this version. but just know that there's been some increases on your insulation. Here's with your wall assemblies. Again, I won't spend much time on this because it doesn't do comparison from last year. It's just a comparison between IACC and ASHRAE. And then the last one I'll show you is for your fenestrations, your windows and doors. Okay, so commissioning plan. What's required in a commissioning plan for a building envelope or building commissioning? It's just the same. If you're familiar with mechanical, electrical, or MEP commissioning, it's almost the same exact tasks. And a lot of the times you can just add these components into your existing MEP commissioning plan. If you're already doing that, you can add the building envelope components into it, and that is completely fine. If you are going to do this as a standalone commissioning plan, these are the items that should be included. You should have all the commissioning tasks or activities broken out, the roles and responsibilities of all the team members, what they're supposed to do and who's supposed to do it. Some type of communication protocol, meaning that if an issue is to arise, how is that handled and at what levels? A documentation. How are you going to document any of these items? How are you going to document your design reviews, your inspections, the final report, any issues, things like that? That should be laid out in the commissioning plan. How things are going to be reported, and then the schedule of activities. When are you going to come out and do inspections? When is functional testing going to happen? How is functional testing going to happen? How long is it going to take? So all these things should be included in your commissioning plan. So now we move into the document review. So what needs to be included in that? So you're supposed to review the construction documents. So it doesn't tell you exactly when someone needs to review those, but sometime when you have the CDs, the construction documents, the air barrier or envelope, I should say, needs to be reviewed. These need to have these construction documents at this point need to have all the components of the envelope assemblies clearly identified. So if the CDs are earlier on and they don't have these identified, then there's no need to have us review or someone review the documents yet, because the envelope assemblies have not been created. So you're reviewing something that doesn't exist. That's not the point of it. You want to make sure all those things are clearly identified before you review the documents. Once you get the documents that have those details for each interconnection, any penetrations, any joints, any things like that, we're going to be looking at. So if you look at the photo right here on the screen, you can see there's a lot of different interconnections or connection points. And so those are the items that we really want to look at when we're doing this document review. The documents, the air barrier on these documents need to extend over all the surfaces of the building envelope and be continuous. So I said air barrier over the building envelope. So again, keeping the terms straight. One other thing I mentioned in that sentence there was a continuous air barrier on the CDs. Now, we all know it's super easy to draw a continuous air barrier on the CD, but in real life, that's probably harder to accomplish than it is on paper. So you can see on the screen here, this blue line represents the air barrier. So if we just drew a line and we didn't pick up our pencil, we would have a continuous air barrier. But you can see right here, we have to lift our pencil up to get to the next blue line. So that right there leaves an opening in our air barrier and areas for leakage. So again, we come down to this can light detail. And again, there's no continuous air barrier there, so we would call that out. And then the air barrier doesn't go onto the wall here from the overhang. So we would then have to somehow connect that. Easy way, all right, I'll just draw a blue line all the way across. It's continuous, right? And we've now met the intent of doing the drawing review because it's continuous on the CD. Now, once we get into the field, someone's going to have to figure out how to connect those two things because it doesn't work like that in the field. In the field, you're going to see something like this, right? And so you're going to say, look at all these zigs and zags and different components and things like, how do we connect one air barrier to the next? So maybe you do a mock-up wall or something like that. But that is something from a design or document review, we don't need to figure out at that point yet. But it might be smart to start talking about it because the architect might have an idea. Hey, maybe we just put some flashing here or flashing there. So we'll look to see if everything is wrapped, sealed, caulked, gasketed, taped, everything like that above, just to minimize the air leakage. Another thing with the document review is that it's not just the CDs. So CDs can be just drawings or, you know, the A sheets, things like that, but it's also other supporting data. What I mean by that is sometimes the specifications have things called out in them that the drawings don't. So if it's a supporting data for the building envelope, then we need to make sure that that gets reviewed. One of the things that I like to look for in the specifications is that there are air leakage rates for windows and doors and things like that, that the IECC calls out as maximum. So if your window doesn't meet a certain air leakage standard or what was tested in the lab, then that doesn't meet the intent of this document review, and the building won't meet the intent of passing the building envelope test. So all these things are important things. I usually would create a log of items for the design review for questions and things like that, and then have a meeting with the architect and the engineer and discuss like, hey, look, we're missing some details here. What should we do? We can't just draw a line. Let's talk about it. So that's kind of the best practice on that. And then the last thing I'll say on this slide is this document review does need to be sent in with the permit. So that's a little bit hard and tricky to do at this point in time. Sometimes the permit's already been given, or a different permit or partial permit, things like that. But I think that is going to be forthcoming here as different AHJs figure out how to gather that information from people. So here's a list, as I mentioned, of the different windows and doors, the maximum leakage rate for these assemblies. So it could be as simple as just having this table in the specification that all windows and doors need to meet or beat these minimum leakage rates. And then that supporting data that you're supposed to review has then met the intent of the design review or document review. I will also say that if your windows and doors and other fenestrations don't meet these maximum leakage rates, then when you test the entire building envelope, you're more likely to fail. You won't necessarily fail, but you're more likely to fail. So now we'll move on to the inspection side of things. So we talked about the commissioning plan. We've talked about the document review. Now we're going to talk about inspections. What do you need to inspect? So the inspection is of the air barrier components and assemblies. Everything I said in the last slide about the air barrier being continuous and overlapping and all that applies to this too. So when we're actually looking at the drawings, we're looking at that from a drawing standpoint. We take those out and carry them into the field and say, this is exactly what we're supposed to be looking at and how they should be installed in real life in the field. And this is where things start to get a little bit off track if you're not careful. Early conversations and planning need to happen with all the trades. Think about how many different trades there are that are part of the building envelope. You got people with windows, maybe a different trade for doors, another trade for roofing, another trade installing the air barrier. You know, it starts to add up quite a bit. And they all these different trades have to somehow terminate their material somewhere, somehow. And according to the drawings, they should all be connected somehow. So think about that. Nobody's going to take someone else's product and say, oh, let me finish this nicely into ours. Especially if they don't know anything about the product or anything like that. They don't want to be liable. So having a meeting would be very good early on to discuss with all the trades. Hey, how are we going to connect this roof membrane that's flopping in the wind to this blue air, water, vapor barrier? And when? Like maybe the brick goes up before that gets terminated. Now what? You're just going to tuck that behind the brick and just let it flop behind the brick? That's probably not good. So I think that meeting, even though it's not required by code, is very beneficial to the project. Now let's talk about all the trades that don't have to do anything with the air barrier, but they still come in contact with the air barrier. So things like maybe if you have continuous wall insulation, that has to be adhered or attached to the building somehow, and the air barrier is probably already going to be installed. And what about the brick layer that comes in after that? You know, they might be putting in brick ties or things like that, and they're now penetrating that nice clean air barrier that was installed perfectly. Well, these people should also be at that same meeting to discuss, like, hey, if you puncture this, there's a way that you have to repair this, or tell somebody that you did. It's so easy for them to just cover it up and no one's going to see. But once you go to do the air barrier testing, that stuff's not going to lie. You're going to see leakage coming out of those areas where maybe someone made a penetration and didn't seal it up correctly before they put something over it. So these inspections are very important, but it doesn't stop at inspections. Inspections are only a snippet in time. So it's more about educating the entire project team and all the subcontractors on what to do and how important this air barrier is. Building envelope verification. This is section C for commercial, 401.3. I emphasize that this is commercial because some of you may have done residential. This looks like a residential certificate of compliance. This is now required for commercial buildings. This is called the thermal envelope certificate. I'll just note the one that's on the screen is a screenshot of a residential one. There is not one that I've seen yet that has been made for the commercial side of things. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but right now there's not one in the code that is a sample like this. So just looking at the attendees here on the call, it looks like we have some building inspectors on the call. So I'd ask, feel free to type in the chat if you want. Is anybody receiving or asking for this yet? This thermal envelope certificate? Remember, this is a required document, and in section C 401.3, where this is required, it says you can't get your permanent certificate of occupancy until this is received. So if you're a building inspector or somebody that needs to put in for a certificate of occupancy, just know that this is coming down the line, that this should be submitted with that. I know on a lot of my projects, I haven't seen any that have asked for this yet. but that doesn't mean people aren't doing that. So what does this certificate need to have on it? Here are the minimum things that need to be on there. The R values, U factors, solar heat gain coefficient, and the envelope test results. So this isn't something that can just be turned in without functional testing of the envelope system. This is saying that the envelope system has been verified, it's good to go. And it passes. So keep an eye out for that. I mentioned that there's operable openings interlocked. This is a section that's new. When we're doing building envelope verification, a lot of times this gets overlooked because it's thought to be with mechanical systems, but this is specifically called out in the building envelope system. We all like our big roll-up doors when we're having our coffee or adult beverage, but you know, that is not good when the air conditioning or heating is blasting and that door is open. So there's some interlocks. So that garage door type system is your building envelope and you're opening it up. So if your operable opening is larger than 40 square feet, then you need to have some HVAC controls interlocked. So again, that might be looked at more as a mechanical commissioning, but actually it's part of the envelope that is operating, that is opening and closing. So it is something that could get overlooked, that I want to make sure it doesn't get overlooked. Okay, and then the final item before we get to the actual testing is the reporting. IECC pathway says you just need to do a final report. ASHRAE says you actually have to do two different reports, a preliminary report and then a final report. Both pathways, the report has to show any issues found during your testing, documentation of those issues, and documentation of any resolution to those issues. So the final report does have some minor requirements of what's going to be in there, those two things, but it could add a whole lot more if you would like. All right, so let's get into the testing aspect of the building envelope. Building envelope testing. If you're not familiar with it, there are a number of ways you can test the building envelope. You have all the ones listed on the screen and probably more, but these are probably the most common that I've seen in the industry. Excuse me. Some of these towards the bottom are starting to phase out because they're no longer kind of viable, things like that. But these are all different ways you can test the building envelope. The reason I put this in here is because different rating systems will ask you or allow you to do some of these. You could do thermography instead of a whole building leakage test, or water intrusion, or assembly testing, things like that. So for our presentation and for the IECC, they only talk about that first one, whole building leakage testing. So that is what code requires. So let's talk about that. So here's a photo of an inspection, just to give you an idea. This is a wall, a glazing here that comes up to corrugated decking. And then the corrugated decking did not have any air barrier there, so they spray foamed it. And spray foam was an afterthought instead of during design. That wasn't caught. So, you know, it's probably going to leak there, but it looks pretty once it's done. And no one's going to see that. But when we go out there and test, it was leaking quite a bit during our air barrier test, our whole building air leakage test. So we did some diagnostics and did use thermography, and we did see quite a bit of air leakage in those little flutes. So this little red kind of wispy things, that's the warm air leaking out of that corrugated decking. So this is just an example of doing our whole building air tested. It didn't pass the leakage rate. So you have to do some tracer smoke or thermography to find the issues. Issues have to be resolved and then documented. And so we use thermography to try to find those issues. Performance verification. So this is the whole building air testing. Basically, all buildings have to be air tested. That's, with the exception of what pathway you're going down, things like that. On that, the buildings are broken up into R and I occupancies, and then other occupancies. So when to test, what if you fail, and diagnostics. So you want to test before any item, you want to test before your building envelope gets covered up, your components get covered up. So that's what you want to do. What if you fail? Well, if you fail and those things aren't covered up, you can fix them. If you fail and they are covered up, you're in luck, because right now the code says you only have to fix things that wouldn't need deconstructing. Now, I think that will change in the future. And then the diagnostics, again, that's either smoke, tracer smoke, or thermography, or anything like that. So the group I and R occupancies, you're allowed to leak 0.30 CFM per square foot of envelope area. The other occupancies, you're allowed to leak 0.4 CFM per square foot of envelope area. In the other occupancies besides R and I, you can see there is a leniency that you actually could go higher. They've done this in the code because it's not new to the industry, but it's new to a lot of people. A lot of people are afraid. What if we don't pass? So they're giving you some leniency that you can actually go up to 0.6 on non-R and I occupancies. You also can sample 8 or more units for R and I occupancy. You sample 1 in 7 or 20%. You got to sample 1 on the top floor, 1 on the ground floor, and then it's up to the tester to pick the other sampling rate or sampling units. For each unit that fails for R and I, 2 more units are to be added to the testing. For R and I occupancies, you can also sample. So, but they also have limits on what you can do. So all areas directly under a roof have to be tested. All areas with entrances, exposed floors, loading docks, or below grade. Then, once all of those have been tested, those areas, you sample 25% of all the other areas. So let's look at the allowable leakage rates between IECC and ASHRAE 90.1. Again, there are some little differences, but I wanted to put on the screen so everybody's well aware, no matter which pathway you go down, you do have different allowable leakage rates. A lot of these are the same, but I'll show you that the one thing I'll point out is on the sampling for ASHRAE, the building has to be over 50,000 square feet. Now, just remember, for building envelope testing, there's a lot of preparation that has to happen. And you might ask, who's responsible for this? Well, it really depends on what's on the contract. I know when we do it, we don't touch anything. If we touch something, it's our fault if something gets messed up or there's finger pointing, things like that. So it's always best to say it's the contractor's responsibility for preparing these items for the building envelope test. So You can see from the photo, that's a picture of a rooftop unit. You can seal up all intentional openings before you test your whole building air leakage test. So that means any mechanical system that is intended to open and close, you can seal up. You need to make sure plumbing traps are full of water. Think about that. That's a pathway of air that's going to go somewhere else, in or out, if there's not a water trap. We don't want the HVAC systems coming on during the test. That's gonna create some air movement and things like that. So that has to be disabled. We don't want any interior doors closed. Essentially, you'd be blocking off areas if an interior door is closed. So all interior doors have to be propped open. And then you think about ceiling tiles. Well, we don't want to blow ceiling tiles up. And there's air above those ceiling tiles, right? That's part of and within the building envelope. So we want to make sure that so many ceiling tiles are popped open. We want to make sure combustion equipment is turned off. Last thing we want to do is, suck in, combustion air or flue gas into the building, or even natural gas, things like that. So pilot lights and things like that have to be off. Door closers. So if you have automatic door closers and that's the door that you're going to be putting a blower door on, you're going to have to set up panels and things like that. That door closer is going to get in the way. So those door closers are probably going to have to be disconnected or come off the frame temporarily for the test. And then I know sometimes, not all the time, it depends on what equipment you're using to do your air leakage testing, but sometimes you need non-GFCI power, and that can cause quite a bit of issues. So just make sure that there are some that what needs to be done for this building prep. There is quite a bit of prep that needs to be done. All right, so how do we test existing buildings? Same way. Okay, well, when do I need to test it? Well, anytime you alter the building envelope, any part that you touch that you alter has to comply with the newest code for building envelope. So if you touch windows, your windows then have to be updated to the newest code standards, solar heat gain coefficient, things like that. If you touch exterior brick or exterior, take brick off and redo that, again, you're gonna have to update the insulation values, things like that. Now, how do you test? Well, this is when it gets a little tricky. You can test assemblies. So if you're not testing or touching everything, you can still test a window for air leakage. Now, the code hasn't talked about that yet in detail on, well, how much air leakage can this window have? Well, we did have that little sheet that says it can't leak more than this, but that's a factory test. It's not a field test. So right now, I think it's too early to say, how do we test existing building assemblies? Because the code doesn't address that yet. And then the last slide for today, and then we open it up for some questions. What is required of commissioning? So this is what is required, or what you would be used to for your regular MEP type commissioning. You would have a plan, tab, functional test documentation report. That looks very familiar to what we're talking about for building envelope. Now, the photo on the right, the screenshot, is the compliance checklist for MEP commissioning. Right now, there is nothing for envelope commissioning, this checklist. The only thing that we have that is close enough to that, or close to that, if we remember, let me see if I can go back to this one slide. Here we go. This thermal envelope certificate. That is the closest thing that we have right now to this document at the end. So maybe in the future, this checklist will add building envelope into it. Maybe not. Maybe there'll be a separate one. I don't know. But for right now, there is not one that we have to do, but just know it could show up as part of MEP commissioning. So with that, I'll take some questions if there are any. I know that there will be a survey at the end that will pop up. So if you're leaving now, you're more than welcome to, but if you want to stick around and ask some questions, feel free, but please fill out that survey at the end. So thank you all.
Thanks, Kevin. We do actually have a pretty good list of questions in the Q&A. Might need to revisit some previous slides to bring those back up.
Okay. All right, so I do see a first question here. Doesn't the IECC require building envelope testing unless you are in one of the exceptions and in the right climate zone? Only for buildings in the exceptions of items 1 or 2, excuse me, of CO 4.2.5.1.2 would then use item 3 materials with commissioning. Yes, so let me go back to that slide. Okay, so the IECC, and let me know if this answers your question or not, does not require whole building envelope air leakage testing. You can just do the items on the left side of the screen. So hopefully that answers your question, Ryan. Now, you might be confused with this one, which is ASHRAE. ASHRAE says that you can skip the left side if you're under exception 3, which is what you're talking about. But then you would have to do this design review and inspections. So it depends on which pathway you're following, but hopefully that gives you a little bit more clarity. You might have mixed up a little bit between IECC and ASHRAE. Okay, next question. For example, in 6B would require to test as it would not be such as I was going to. Okay, so Ryan, if you got any more follow-up, please feel free to drop that in the Q&A or chat there. So hopefully that answered your question. Next question. Can this be submitted without a blower door certification? And that is from an anonymous attendee. I am not sure what you're asking about is being submitted, so I'm going to take a guess that you meant this certificate, this thermal envelope certificate. I'm not sure. Blower door certification. There are people who have certifications to do blower door testing. Again, I'm trying to decipher your question here, but the person or entity doing your envelope verification and this certificate and or blower door testing, or sorry, whole building air leakage testing, does not need to be certified. There are some requirements out there that say that they can't be part of a certain team, things like that. But in terms of a certification, an actual certification to doing the test or filling out this certificate on the screen, nobody needs to be certified for that. So hopefully anonymous attendee, wow, I can't say that. That answers your question. Okay, next question. Does the HVAC controls interlock with the garage door, shut down all conditioning in that area? Okay, so good question. So this isn't necessarily quite, this is that weird line between envelope testing and HVAC testing. It does not shut down all of the HVAC equipment in that space, in that area. It sets, it's supposed to set back the cooling and heating temperatures within a certain amount of time. So if the garage door opens then your thermostat should raise the cooling to 90 degrees and lower your heating down to 55 degrees. And that has to happen within 10 minutes of that door opening. So again, that's a little bit kind of a blurred line there, but hopefully that answers your question, Adam. All right, let's see the next one from Linda. Building envelope commissioning is truly an interdisciplinary. Do you have suggestions to eliminate finger pointing and get to success? Are there contractual items or owner engagement that is helpful? I agree. It is definitely quite a bit of interconnection here between all the disciplines. Some suggestions for eliminating finger pointing and success. I really, truly think early engagement with all the contractors is the key to that. It's not required by code, and that's the tough part, because we all know everything's driven by cost, and having these meetings and having someone connect everybody together is going to cost because it's a meeting. But really, that is truly the only way to eliminate this and to get success. That doesn't eliminate it completely, but it does help. It's just education. And maybe there just needs to be more education in general throughout Colorado about this, and maybe it'll help. The more and more that envelopes get tested and inspected, the more and more everybody's going to get familiar with it. The less and less finger pointing, the more and more people are going to speak up when they see a hole. And they don't want to, hey, that's not my fault. I didn't put that there. I want to tell the general contractor that's there before I start my work, or else they're going to blame me. So the accountability starts to come there as more and more people get familiar with this type of testing and inspections. Contractual items or owner engagement. That one's a tough one. That second part of the question. Again, I think it's letting everybody know right now, the state of Colorado does not require any penalties for a leaky envelope or being over the limit. I do know that some specifications, there's not many, do call out an actual dollar value. They'll penalize people if they don't meet their envelope leakage requirements. So for every CFM above their leakage requirement, they have to pay a certain, 20 cents or something like that. That could be put in a contract or in the specs. Not saying that's the right way to go, but that is one avenue that I've seen on different projects. But again, I think it's just the education. So maybe the owner helps educate the team. Maybe it's the state, maybe it's the different AHJs, things like that. Belinda, hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, we do have another one from Ryan. This one's a long one. It might take me a minute to read it. Let's see how much time we got. We got about 5 minutes. Ryan, stick with me. I will answer your question. Let me get to the next question first, because that right now is the last one. And then since yours is a couple paragraphs that I have to read, I'll get back to it. Not to diminish your question by any means. Okay, the next one from Jordan. What all details on the envelope verification has to be submitted at the time of permit? Only the results of the drawing review or something similar to the envelope certificate shown in the presentation? Question mark. Right, so at the time of permit, let me see if I can pull that one up. Document review. So at the time of permit, really it just has to show that a document review was done. Now, it's vague, right? Like that kind of sucks. I hate that answer. I hate vague answers. I like being to the point. I'll be honest, it's gray. It doesn't say. The code does not say. What I would do personally, whoever has done the document or drawing review would probably have some type of report to it saying, hey, we reviewed this. Here are our issues. Here are our comments, things like that. I would submit that with your permit. then there's no question. It could be as simple as a letter on a letterhead saying, I am the hired commissioning reviewer for the building envelope. I've reviewed the building envelope per IECC or ASHRAE 90.1, and everything conforms to my design review at this time. It's super vague. And to be honest, I don't know too many AHJs requiring this yet. Maybe because they don't know what it is. Maybe they don't know what to ask for, things like that. But as time goes on, you're going to see more and more HJs clearly defining what needs to be presented with this permit at the time of permit. So I know that's not a direct answer, Jordan, but hopefully that gets you to the point, somewhat to the point. Okay, so now going back, Ryan, let's see. Let me read your question. Give me a minute to read through it since it's long. Buildings or portions of building group INR. Okay. Okay, buildings or portions of buildings other than group INR there, and exceptions between 5,000 and 50,000 in climate zone. Okay. Building. Okay, so Ryan, it looks like you're following that correctly. You're reading that correctly. A building in 6B would be required to test as it doesn't fall into one of the exceptions listed in there. So thanks for that detailed remark there. You are correct. You're following it exactly. Okay, we got about a minute or two left. I don't see any more questions coming in, but feel free. We still got a minute or two to put in your questions. You have any? I'm not seeing any. So with that, I'll put this back up on the screen for you. Just a reminder that there is going to be a survey once we end the webinar here. So please ask that you take that survey and feel free to reach out to us anytime on any questions you might have. And thank you all for joining today.
Thank you, everyone.